So Aaron Curtis is a fitness icon and bodybuilder from Australia. In 1998, when Aaron stepped into the gym and started lifting weights, Aaron stepped in the gym and started lifting weights. At the age of 15, he embarked on his fitness journey. In 2002, at 19, Aaron fell while climbing a tree and tore his ligament. This forced him to leave athletics and Australian rules football behind. At this point, Aaron had to sit on the sidelines, becoming inactive for the first time in his life. Although his leg was out of action, Aaron continued training his upper body in the gym from 2003. He refused to let his misfortune get him down. The Australian trained rigorously for the next 5 years, and his efforts were rewarded. But by the time Aaron was 25, he'd managed to sculpt an impressive physique. After being encouraged by his friends, Aaron decided to enter his first bodybuilding competition, the INBA Mr. Novice Australia. He walked away with a trophy, realizing that he had the potential to become successful as a bodybuilder. This motivated him to push even harder in the gym, determined to add another trophy to his cabinet. He won numerous competitions since first stepping on stage in 2008, such as the 2012 NABBA Class 2 state champion and the 2013 INBA Class 3 state champion. Aaron has been a major source of inspiration for many, including myself, managing to achieve an incredible physique the natural way without using steroids or taking any lazy shortcuts. Aaron, where does your motivation come from?
Motivation for what?
Well, I guess if we start specifically, your zest and motivation for bodybuilding. I mean, it could be so many different sports. What is it? What specifically drives you? I mean, you're in COVID at the moment. You're locked down, and I spoke to you before, and you're still training. What do you think drives you? Do you know?
I've always needed a very intense physical outlet for me, just personally. I didn't realize that until quite recently, to be honest. And then when I sort of worked my way back through my life, I'd always had some form of physical activity that I was, I guess, very into.
Yeah.
So when I stopped playing football, when I stopped running, I started training in the gym more. And I guess I've just used that as my physical outlet for the last 22 years, pretty much. So, yeah.
And do you find how do you find it impacts your mental health?
It's very important for my mental health, which I only became aware of that after the birth of my daughter 4 years ago. And I kind of slacked off a bit with my eating and my training. And yeah, I found when I was just cruising through my workouts and not focusing on the things that I used to love to focus on, it was a big negative in my life. Yeah. And I felt quite down.
And so coming back from that, do you feel that's helped make you stronger or helped evolve you into a new kind of a new person or anything like that? Do you feel like you train a different way with a new level of intensity now? You're obviously balancing.
Because I've been through a bit of a lull.
Yeah.
Unfortunately not. I'm still not as good of a bodybuilder as I was years ago, like with my eating, my sleeping, my training.
Yeah.
So I feel like sleep's a massive thing for me.
Yeah.
And because I'm just a little bit underslept most of the time, my intensity in the gym's definitely not as high as it used to be.
Yeah.
So I'm doing more volume these days rather than just training super hard.
Yeah. What do you mean by volume? Can you be
just
what does that mean?
More sets. So in the past, I might have done 1 set per exercise. I worked up recently to doing 4 work sets per exercise for everything, which is crazy for me. I'm used to very low volume stuff.
Yeah.
But all my little overuse injuries, like inflammatory problems with my elbows, my knees, I've got tennis elbow, tricep tendonitis, bicep tendonitis. I've got inflamed rotator cuffs. It didn't like the extra volume.
Yeah.
So I think the low volume, high intensity stuff was actually better for my body because I didn't have to do as much work to get the same results.
Yep.
So I feel I really need to go back to the low volume stuff to look after myself.
Hmm. And during the lockdown period, you're still not allowed in the gyms, and it's easy.
No, it's not.
It's easy to kind of just go, oh well, I can't get into a gym, I can't train. But so what have you done? You've set something up at home. What can you tell us what you've done?
Yeah, I was the first day the gym closed. I went out and I bought some stuff, which was good. I got in before the rush. Um, so I've got a squat rack. I've got an adjustable bench. I ordered a like a multi gym thing with some cables and a Smith machine on it.
Yeah.
I've got some adjustable dumbbells, so I can do everything I need to do myself.
Yep.
Yeah, it's amazing how effective your training can be with such little amount of equipment.
Yep.
Just the basics.
Do you find when you're in a gym with lots of people, and I'm asking this, I guess, a lot of this stuff's for my own personal benefit. Do you find when you're training around people, you're more focused, same focus, or less focused than what you would if you were training alone?
I I think I really enjoy the atmosphere of the gym, having people around me that are training also.
Yep.
Um, I just love that, I guess, the atmosphere of having other people around training, and especially if anyone's sort of challenging me. I just love that sort of competitiveness.
Yep.
If there's some guys walking around the gym, I know they're squatting a plate more than I squat and they're lifting more than whatever. I find that helps me and keeps me focused on what I'm doing.
Yep.
Whereas when I'm in the garage by myself, it's easy to switch off. And obviously there's no one walking around, you know, calling me skinny and that I should lift more.
Yeah. Yeah. I find the same thing personally. I've got a gym at home, but I find my intensity is a lot higher at the gym. And then I ask myself, why is that? And I think I may know why, but I could be, there may be something even deeper in my subconscious, but perhaps I've got a desire to, like an ego driven thing. Perhaps there's perhaps a desire to impress others in the gym, or to show that I'm not a lazy worker, or perhaps there's some, chicks in the gym that I want to subconsciously impress, or there's some blokes over in the corner. And I want to, etc. But, and then you got to ask the question, is that healthy or unhealthy? Well, the outcome's healthy, you're training.
Yep.
So it is what it
I
is.
I often make up stories in my head before a heavy set. If there's someone in the gym, I'll pretend that, they've just abused me or something like that. And I'm squatting to get back at them, kind of thing.
Love it.
I've got one guy that he's a client, but I've shouted at him a couple of times before a heavy set and just said, called out, like, fuck you. And he's like, looked at me like, what the hell? What's going on?
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Hey, whatever works.
Whatever works. Yeah.
Whatever works for you. And I'm sure it's not taken personally. So
No, he enjoys it, I think.
have you experienced many failures? And if so, can you think of one, and what have you learnt from it?
Failures. Geez, I'm sure I have.
Maybe not necessarily call it failures. What are some downtimes? I mean, you spoke before about the challenges of, well, it would have been a happy time when you had your daughter. That's an example of challenge.
Yep. Yeah, that was definitely a challenge, and it was definitely the most down I've ever been for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
So that was, I guess, interesting to work through, and I guess just interesting to learn about myself. That if I'd let myself fall into bad patterns and habits, that it affects me emotionally and psychologically. So that was just, it was very interesting. Obviously, it's not enjoyable to go through, but it's just interesting to learn about yourself, I guess.
Yeah.
Other things that haven't been so successful, I guess just plenty of injuries. You mentioned falling out of a tree and busting my knee. That was a big one,
Mm-hmm.
and that changed the direction that I was going, I guess, in regards to my physical activity.
Yep.
I really stopped running and doing as much cardio, and just focused a lot more on weight training after that point.
Yep.
Um, what else? I guess. It wasn't. Oh, it was definitely a failure. I failed a drug test. That was a big failure.
Yep.
Um, so 2010, testing positive to 1,3-dimeth stimulant in a pre-workout.
Mm-hmm.
Getting banned for effectively 3 years. It was a 2-year ban, but it covered the comps like 2 years later. So I had to wait to the next year to go again.
Yep.
So that was really shit. Not because I couldn't compete. Like, I didn't really care about competing as much, but it was shit because I felt like I was the one person in the industry that I could trust 100% to never test positive to a prohibited substance.
Yep.
And ironically, I tested positive to a prohibited substance.
Yep.
There's always people talking shit in the industry about this person or that person, taking drugs and cheating. And it had never bothered me too much because people that don't know you, their opinion of you shouldn't matter too much. But when I found out I tested positive, to know what everyone around me was going to think and say, that was very annoying.
Yeah. How did you deal with it? I mean, I saw it, that was years ago now, but I saw it. I mean, you always get the, sniggering keyboard warriors. It's always going to happen. How did you
Yep.
deal with it? And, we all can learn something from this on how to deal with the critics and the haters.
Well, in regards to that specific incident, testing positive, I was super angry for a day or two. Just angry at the world, life's not fair kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I realized that, like, I'd kind of said to myself, this is bullshit. I don't drink, I don't smoke. I never even used pre-workouts before that point. A client had given me a tub of pre-workout, and that's the tub that I was using that I tested positive to.
Yeah.
So I felt very sorry for myself for a couple of days. I said, fuck it. What's the point of being a natural bodybuilder? I'm just going to jump on gear and get massive. And 2 days later, I was like, why would I do that? Like, what am I trying to prove just by, I tested positive to a pre-workout? Why would I jump on gear after 12 years of training? Why would I suddenly just jump on gear because I failed a drug test? So anyway, I got over that pretty quickly. I realized that I can still train, I can still eat, I can still be a bodybuilder 100% of the time. I just can't compete for a few years.
Yeah.
And that wasn't such a big deal in the end. So dealing with that was fine. But I guess all the talk online about, Aaron failed the drug test. Obviously he was taking steroids, because ASADA don't release the substance that you've tested positive to at first. They just say that there has been a positive test. So of course, when a bodybuilder tests positive to something, it has to be steroids, because what else would a bodybuilder take?
Yeah.
So before they actually release the official, I guess, documentation about what has been in my system for the positive test, there's a lot of talk about me taking everything under the sun. And even then, when the official statement was released, people were like, "Oh, bullshit!" As if he only took, the stimulant in the pre-workout. He's obviously taken steroids, and they're just covering it up and saying, "Oh, it was just a stimulant in the pre-workout."
Yeah.
I'm like, well, why would ASADA give a shit about, Aaron Curtis, natural bodybuilder from Australia? ASADA don't care about natural bodybuilding. So I don't know why there'd be a cover up.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, there's just all the stories that come along with it. And again, you just got to, not let the noise affect you. Everyone that's talking crap doesn't really know me. The people that did know me felt sorry for me. They weren't talking shit about me. They were like, "Oh my God, I use that every day and you've tested positive to it. Whoops."
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't too bad. I was very angry for a day, but in the long run, it didn't really affect my life, my way of life. You know.
Yeah. Is it easy? Is it easy to let something like that affect your way of life? Is it easy to let those
But
insecurities feed into your brain and want to do something irrational? I mean, you said there were these fleeting thoughts of you wanting to jump on the gear.
yep,
Um, yeah, I mean, those it kind of it digs at you. Were you thinking about it before you went to bed at night? Were you losing sleep over it? You know?
I was angry for literally 1 or 2 days,
Yeah,
um, and then I realized that jumping on gear just because I tested positive, I was only thinking to do that to sort of to prove to everyone else this is what I look like when I'm on gear,
yeah,
as opposed to as opposed to not.
yeah,
Um, and then I thought, no one gives a shit. The only person that gives a shit is me.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I got over that pretty quickly. Um, yeah,
It's a pretty humble statement to make. I mean, nobody gives a shit because us in our own little world, sometimes we think that everyone, is obsessed about us, and and then these kind of events happen, and then all these irrational thoughts just fly around, and the emotion and the ego, it's just it all tornadoes, and I think it's a pretty remarkable that you're able to bounce back after a very small 2 days. Um,
if if the ban was going to stop me from training and eating and sleeping and doing everything that I was doing, well, then I would have been massively affected.
yeah,
You know, but actually competing is such a small part of your life as a bodybuilder.
yeah,
Like you'll spend a year or two training for one day.
yeah,
So the comp's just one day.
yeah,
You've got every other day of the year to keep doing what you're doing.
yeah,
I just when I get to that point of competing, well, I'm not allowed to compete. And I did compete anyway because I competed in the untested comps.
yeah,
So 2 years after I tested positive, I jumped into the IFBB and the NABBA,
yeah,
um, and just did those comps just for the lols. Something
yeah,
to do while I was not allowed to compete with the tested guys.
yeah. So after like you got the results, say tested positive,
Yep.
and had those 2 days of just irrational tornado thoughts. Did you did you dig yourself in a deeper hole? Like, what I mean is, did you have time off the gym? Did you go out and smash, 10 double quarter pounders at Macca's and have like 10 liters of Coke? Like, did you in any way?
Definitely not.
No, you didn't drown. You didn't deal with your anguish by resorting to something that was more destructive.
Not at all. I was the 2010 comp season, which is where I tested positive. I won the open division at nationals,
Yeah,
which is something I had never thought was. I guess I thought it was possible, but I'd never given it much thought because I thought I was 5 or 10 years away from being that physique that could challenge for an overall title at nationals.
yeah,
So to win it that year was a very big shock to me. And I'd never really believed in myself that I could be that good.
yeah,
So it was a very interesting, I guess, realization for me
yeah,
to walk away from that season with this national overall trophy. I was like, holy shit, I always thought I was just too small, too skinny, not good enough
yeah,
to win this.
yeah,
Um, and to realize that I was at that level now, was awesome.
yeah,
And I thought, far out, I've never even focused on winning this.
yeah,
Um, imagine what I can be like in another few years, and a few years after that, and a few years after that. Like
yeah,
I might actually be able to be a decent bodybuilder.
yeah,
So I was in a really good mindset because of how well I'd done that season, and that was something I didn't think was possible.
yeah,
Um, so getting banned, it kind of just made me knuckle down even more.
yeah.
And I was like, hey, I don't have to compete. I was like, sweet. I just get a long off season. I'm going to come back even better than I was.
Love it. Yeah,
So it kind of just forced me to have a couple of years of focusing on getting big and strong. And I got the biggest and strongest I'd ever been
Yep.
after that. So yeah, I had the most successful off season I've ever had was after getting banned. So it definitely didn't negatively affect me in the gym. It was just kind of forced me to train hard and grow.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I love the fact that you use, the confirmation of your success, which you really hadn't anticipated to its full extent, gave you that much of a high, to keep pressing forward. Couple of days, feeling like all over the place, and when you get times like that, times where you feel down, times where you feel like, I guess, people are judging you. I guess the easy thing to do, and almost the understandable, like there's almost an element you can almost understand that people can resort to things that can be even more destructive to them. But
Yeah,
I guess the positive thing about a sport, in this instance, bodybuilding, is it's your way to, as well, to deal with stress. So it acted as
definitely.
a positive reinforcement, um, compared to a negative reinforcement. And I mean, that in itself is just such a tremendous message. And I'm going to have a chat to Charles and make sure that he gets that out there, because it's such a tremendous story. It's a great
Yeah,
story. It's a feel good story. It's a story of success. And what I was saying the other, that he gets people successful. They're doing really well. Everything's going well, and then bang, they go down, but then they shoot back up again. And I think that's the champion mindset. Everyone, you do well, and then bang, you go downhill, and everyone goes, "Ha! I knew it!" And then no one believes in you, and then the real test is to make that rebound again. And it's a great story. Is there anyone in your life that motivated you to develop your bodybuilding career at an early age, like parents, mentors, or public figures?
my dad always trained with weights, so I was very familiar with weight training just through my father.
Hmm.
He was probably trained more like a power lifter than a bodybuilder,
Yeah,
but he was always super lean, always shredded, like full six pack.
yeah,
Always ate very healthy. Did lots of exercise, not just weight training, running, swimming, cycling, surfing, weight training, everything. So he definitely influenced me to be physically active.
yeah,
And because I'd seen him training in the gym all the time, it was just very familiar to me. So when I first got given a pair of dumbbells, I kind of thought, oh, I know what to do with these.
yeah,
And yeah, I just started doing little home workouts in my bedroom.
yeah. I do recall, quite a number of posts over the years of you. You got quite a good relationship, like a bit of a banter relationship with your dad. Would that be an accurate statement?
I like to publicly abuse my father. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not.
and 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 he's quite fine with that as well. So yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's nice that neither of you take yourselves too seriously.
No, not at all.
Um, just to jump back for a second, back to, let's say you got tested for that banned substance and all that, and there's all these hater comments, negative comments, sniggering remarks, snide little swipes at you. Um, I mean, did you respond to that? Did you ignore it? How do you, let's say there's a young person watching and they make, some sort kind of social media post, and they're really putting themselves out there or whatever, and they're trying to give it a crack. And there's bullies, that know them or might not know them, and they're making little swipes. How did you deal with it? And what would your advice be to a young person dealing with little swipes taken to them on something like social media or even at school or anything like that? What would your advice
Yep,
be?
yep. I first experienced it back when I was at school,
Love it. Yep.
and I was posting on the bodybuilding.com forums in the teen bodybuilding section, and I'd posted a couple photos, and someone asked me if I'm natural, and I replied yes. And then I don't know whether it was that same person or someone else chimed in, and I don't recall exactly what was said, but it was basically like, bullshit, you're not natural, stop lying to us. And at 18, I was just like, what the hell? I
Yeah.
was like, what do you mean I'm not natural? Um, and I would have replied and said, no, I've been training for 4 years. I've never touched any drugs. I wasn't even on any supplements at the time, never touched whey protein, creatine, anything. Um, and the negativity I got for defending myself was incredible. And I'd never experienced that before. I'd never had people, calling me out for being a liar.
Yeah.
And it actually made me feel sick. And it was really hurtful at the time,
Yeah.
because I'd never dealt with that before.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I just really hated being called a liar.
Yeah.
Um, and I just had to defend myself from every comment that was made. And I was obviously spending a lot of time doing that.
Yeah.
Um, but over the years, you learn that, everyone judges everyone. And if people don't really know you, their judgment of you, it shouldn't be that important.
Mm-hmm.
The people that know you well, if they're judging you very negatively, maybe you've done something wrong, and maybe you should listen to what that person has to say.
Yeah.
But people that only know me from a picture on the internet, it's hard to judge.
Yeah.
They don't know anything about me personally. They
Yeah.
don't know how long I've been training for. They don't know how hard I train, how well I eat, how much I sleep. They don't know anything. So you've really got to just ignore, or I still reply to comments most of the time now in a joking way. Um, and if anyone's got something to ask or say and they're a bit negative, then I'll generally always reply.
Yeah.
But it definitely doesn't affect me negatively anymore.
Yeah.
Um, I've learned that, everyone's got an opinion. And like I said, the people that don't really know you, their opinion of you, it doesn't matter. So.
Um, like when you were younger and you did receive some of those comments, liar and all that kind of stuff, I guess it's not, no one would like to be, no one would say, yeah, I want to be called a liar or I want to be called a phony.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have our own thoughts in our head when we're not feeling the greatest. Think, geez, am I a phony? Am I a liar? I ask myself that question sometimes too. I think, what am I doing here? Is this all a facade for something else? Did you feel that kind of negativity or that questioning, did it make you stop what you were doing? Did it impact on you achieving your goals, especially when you were young and it used to get to you?
Yep. No,
Yep.
it affected me emotionally, and I was so confused as to why someone wouldn't believe me.
Yeah.
Like, you asked me a question, I said, no, I'm not on drugs, I'm natural. And then they don't believe me. I couldn't understand why they wouldn't believe me.
Yep.
Like, I don't know what my motivation was, to lie. So why wouldn't this person just believe what I had to say?
Yep.
Um, Years down the track, I guess you learn that there's negative stigma for taking drugs and doing this. And obviously, if you're competing as a natural, and you're on drugs, you've got every motivation in the world to lie about it.
Yep.
But at the time, I had absolutely no intention of competing. I was just lifting weights for something to do at lunchtimes.
Yep.
Um, and I just couldn't understand why this person wouldn't believe, my answer to their question. Just,
Yep.
it was very confusing. But no, it didn't stop me doing what I was doing. I was just very confused at the time. That's all.
Yeah. And now if somebody, and so I guess, so what you're saying out of that is if you get negative comments, is now the way you deal with it is you either ignore it, or if it's not a complete swipe, if that person is actually, mounting a valid question, a potentially
Yep.
confronting question, you do respond to it.
I'll respond to pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And even though you can tell when someone's deliberately having a real negative swipe at you,
Yep.
I'll always respond calmly and just say, yeah, tell them the truth and leave it at that. There's no point arguing about it.
Yep.
But I will always, state my side of the story and then walk away.
Yeah. And yeah, it's really fascinating. So is there some people that keep going, and at that point, do you just stop, or
Um,
do you feed it? Do you know what I mean?
I definitely sometimes I'll feed it
Oh,
because
you'll feed it. You'll
I'll be in
deliberately.
that mood and I'll be like, oh yes, here we go.
Yeah,
I'm just going to keep you going, and we're going to talk about this for the next week. Um, I enjoy the banter,
yeah,
and that's for me. That's what social media is about.
yeah,
Um, it's about posting things and getting a reaction, and causing a bit of a stir.
yeah,
So most of the time, I'm happy to argue online.
yeah.
Um, but
It gives me courage because I'm scared of that. Perhaps because of my profession, like I'm still scared of it. I'll admit it. I'm scared of, stepping on toes and stuff like that. Perhaps it's different to you, or maybe I'm just still worrying too much. Maybe I still need to, um, but what you,
most people worry about stepping on toes a lot more than I do.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, from your demeanor there, I mean, I didn't think I give much of a crap, but looks like I got some competition here, mate. It's it's funny. My dad's not the oracle of life. But there's what you say. I guess you kind of feed it in a way, and I guess it makes it entertaining for the viewers that follow you on social media. If there is a bit of
Yeah.
drama,
Yeah.
I guess humans love a bit of drama, don't they? They love a bit of beef and stuff like that.
Any
Um,
attention is good attention.
yeah, it's funny. My dad sometimes says doesn't matter if they're talking good about you or bad about you, as long as they're talking about you. But then he
Exactly.
also, but then he also says, I don't know, this may be completely contradictory, is that when you argue with a fool from a distance, people can't tell the difference, which I think is
Yep.
another interesting school of thought.
I
Me,
agree with that.
yeah,
There's no point arguing with someone that has such a narrow-minded, certain view on a specific topic over the internet.
yeah. So
Like,
are you saying that you're not doing that when you respond to people?
I'm not doing it in the sense that I'm emotionally invested in the argument, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
I'm doing it just to poke you a little bit more so
yeah,
that you keep arguing back at me and I can have some fun with it.
yeah, yeah,
Generally, that's how it's working.
yeah,
Um, it's when you're, like back when I was 18 and I was so emotionally invested in
yeah,
trying to talk you into believing that I was actually natural.
yeah,
That's when it negatively affected me. That's when I was, felt sick in my stomach, and it was, I was thinking about it all day and night because I don't know why this person, thinks I'm so dishonest.
yeah.
Mm.
I think I'm getting better over the years as well as coming to. I almost froth on it and embrace it now. I had someone made a comment of me the other day calling me a narcissist, and he said, "Oh, there's a difference." He or she said difference between being confident and cocky, and I actually got the post and reposted it and tagged him in it, and I just said "love you" or something like that with little kisses.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. So I don't know.
I feel insecure now when people aren't giving me
Oh my
negative shit
god.
on my social medias.
Well, so you're at that level. You love it. you,
Or
you
if I'm
froth
not
it.
getting called out, if I'm not getting called out for being a fake natty, well then I'm obviously not a very impressive physique, am I?
Oh my god,
So
I love that.
clearly I need to work harder. So
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah. Oh, unreal. Um, so what advice I want to finish, I guess, by asking you, what advice would you give to a 17-year-old that wants to build their physique?
all right. Well, you've really just got to focus on your eating, your sleeping, your training. So follow a well balanced diet, adequate protein, complex carbs, healthy fats. Um, Basically, you can't get too much sleep, so just sleep as much as you can, at least 8 hours a day.
Yep.
Um, and train in the gym. I'd say if you're 17, anywhere between 3 and 5 days a week.
Yep.
Yep. And just structure your training so that you're slowly getting stronger, and if you're eating enough, you should be growing some muscles.
Yeah. So when you say sources of, the foods that you mentioned, what are some
Yep.
sources of foods that you eat? What are some examples? What's a kind of typical meal that you'd recommend a 17-year-old or you yourself? What are the kind
Yep.
of foods that you would eat? You
Well,
fit
if
right
we
in
go
all categories.
if we go through my diet at the moment, so my protein, I try and vary my protein sources each meal. I try and vary my carb sources, so I'm not eating the same things all the time. So
Is that for
well, at the
taste?
moment,
Is that so you don't get you
sick
know?
of it. No, it's more from a nutrition point of view. I want different micronutrients from different foods. If I was just eating chicken and broccoli every meal, you're obviously not getting a very wide variety of micronutrients, in those two foods.
Yep.
So I like chicken and broccoli, so I'll still eat chicken and broccoli, but I'm not going to have it every meal. My next meal might be kangaroo and spinach and tomatoes, salmon, nuts and seeds, lettuce, cucumber, celery. So just as wide a variety of vegetables as you can.
Yep.
Um, and I try and make every meal of the day a bit different.
Yep.
Yep. So if we go through my diet at the moment, one meal I'm getting my protein from eggs. One meal I'm getting my protein from chicken. At the moment, I've got 2 kangaroo meals. What else I've got? A salmon meal. And then I've just reintroduced shakes back into my diet. So I've been having a shake as well for the last couple weeks. I hadn't had that for years, so I've just been eating whole foods.
Yep.
My carbs generally come from sweet potatoes, beetroot, rice, um, and my fats generally come from. Well, if I'm eating fatty meats, but I tend not to. I tend to get most of my fats from vegetable sources, but I'll
Yep.
get obviously some fats in the meats I eat, and salmon. Salmon's higher in fat. Egg yolks, I'm getting some saturated fats in the egg yolks as well. But generally, most of my fats will come from nuts, seeds, avocado, olive oil, stuff like that. Um, and then it's just as many veggies as I can chuck in every meal to go with those foods.
Yep. What type of protein are you currently having at the moment?
I've got a vegan protein at the moment. I've
Oh,
never had a vegan protein powder before in my life.
that's very progressive of you. It's not a pea?
Yeah,
It's not a pea protein, is it?
it's mainly pea protein. Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I've had pea
Yeah.
protein before, and I've tasted nicer things. I think I had one scoop. Yeah, I'll send you
I've,
mine if you want. Oh, the expiry dates.
I've got no taste buds, so it's all good for me.
Got no taste buds.
Well, I've got some, but they don't seem to be as sensitive as others.
Yeah, desensitized to foul taste. I mean, yeah, it's just one person's opinion, but yeah,
Mine tastes great.
really,
Yeah.
fair enough. Maybe you're just weird. Maybe we got the same protein, but you're just weird.
Maybe.
Quite possible. Or maybe you got different. Um, if you could travel back to day one of your startup and you got 15 minutes, day one to when you started bodybuilding, you got 15 minutes, or you've got a very short amount of time to talk to your younger self and communicate
Yep.
any lessons that you've acquired now and saving yourself from making mistakes in the past, and heartache. What would you tell yourself?
Um, Educate yourself on nutrition, number one. Because I know for years I just ate like a normal person, a normal kid. Whereas if I'd eaten a bit more protein and just eaten a bit more food in general,
Yeah,
because I was so active as a kid, I was always super lean.
yeah,
So obviously, if you want to grow muscle and you're staying super lean, clearly you're not eating enough calories.
yeah,
So I would have told myself to educate on nutrition. I started writing down my training sessions very early on. So I was tracking my training almost from the start, which is probably pretty rare for such a young little kid. So I had that down. I slept heaps when I was a kid, so I had that part down as well. I didn't train legs though for probably the first 4 years of my lifting life. So
really,
I would have told little Aaron to train his legs.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
little Aaron's known now for his legs. I mean,
Yeah, little Aaron.
you're the natty
After
leg icon, bro.
after little Aaron busted his knee and had these skinny, just atrophied little legs,
Yeah.
he started doing some squats. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And just tell me about your squat technique before we kind of start to wrap things up.
Yep.
I guess every kind of trainer's probably got their own opinion on squats, if to do them, what types of squats, technique, depth,
Yep.
reps, sets, frequency. Tell us about what you think is the best way to build championship bodybuilding legs
Yep.
aesthetically. What would your
With a squat,
recipe be for that with the squat?
I would say to squat as deep as your level of flexibility allows you. So if you can squat bum to the floor, and maintain a fairly neutral spine throughout that movement, then you should squat bum to the floor.
Yep.
People say it's bad for the knees, but the knee joint's supposed to bend. The knee joint's supposed to bend further than 90 degrees. You should be able to get your heel to your bum,
Yep.
you know. So practice squatting as deep as you can whilst maintaining correct posture.
Yep.
I love low bar squats just because they involve more of my extensor chain as opposed to just a high bar squat, which focuses more on the quads. But it depends what you want to focus on.
What's a low bar squat?
Low bar squats where it sits kind of on your rear delts rather than on your traps.
Oh yeah.
Yep, just where the bar positioning sits.
Yeah.
So if you watch an Olympic lifter, generally they'll practice front squats and high bar squats.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at a power lifter, they'll almost always squat in a low bar position.
Yep.
Where the bar's pulled right down their back onto their rear delts.
Yep.
It allows you obviously to get the bar closer to your hips, which is where you're hinging. So mechanically, it's an easier movement with the bar lower on your back.
Yeah.
And then it will involve the glutes and the hamstrings a bit more, as
Yep.
opposed to a high bar squat, which kind of forces you to put more of the emphasis on your quads.
Yep.
So it depends what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And reps, I like slightly higher reps for lower body. So I'd say somewhere between 8 and 15 if you're looking to build muscle, to stay within that rep range for your legs.
Yep.
And that's about it. Full depth, higher reps, and push hard. I see most people when they train legs, they don't push very hard. They'll
Yep.
train to failure on bench press. They'll train to failure on bicep curls. They do squats and they'll stop a set. They probably could have done 6 more reps. It's like, well, no wonder your legs are lagging because you train everything else hard and you train legs like you're 65 years old and you've had a hip replacement.
Yeah. And what are the benefits of building, doing squats and training legs? Are there any benefits? Does it have any benefits on the rest of your physique? I mean, you mentioned, can you also clarify for me, you said extensors. Do you mean glutes and
Yep.
hamstrings there? It helps there. And does it have an impact on your upper
I
body?
mean,
Or
your entire extensor chain all the way down your spine, like your erector spinae muscle, your glutes, your hammies, the entire backside of your body pretty much.
Yep.
So that is your extensor chain, and squatting with the bar in a low bar position just helps put a bit more stress on those bits and not just the front of your thigh, which is your quads.
Does squatting help with your calf muscles and your abs?
Oh, it should help with your abs because you should be bracing during each rep. So your core should be braced hard during every rep of your squat.
Yep.
Calves, I reckon I can get a bit of a calf pump doing squats just because obviously you're stabilizing through your ankles. So the muscles in your lower leg are switched on and they're working. They may not really be contracting and stretching throughout the movement too much, but they're doing something. You wouldn't be getting a lot of growth in your calf out of a squat though. It's probably fairly negligible.
What about footwear? And do you ever do squats with your heels on the plates? Yeah, I know you have a specific footwear that you're a bit of a fan of.
Yeah. I've trained legs a lot in the Vibram 5 finger shoes that split your toes, and then but for the majority of my life, I've just worn like a Dunlop Volley, just a flat sole, no cushioning.
Yep.
So it's basically like squatting barefoot.
Yep.
And the reason I've done that is I've got no issues with ankle flexibility, so I can move through a full range squat without sort of falling forward onto my toes.
Yep.
So I've never had to raise my heel, and I've never trained. I trained to get stronger, but it's only stronger than I was, last week.
Yep.
So if I was to buy a pair of squat shoes with a raised heel, well, yeah, I could squat more. But if I just never wore those shoes, well, then I'm just comparing my last squat in flat shoes to my next squat in flat shoes.
Yep.
So that's why I've never bothered with like the Olympic lifting or powerlifting like squat shoe.
Yeah.
Plus, I never wanted more emphasis on my quads. My quads seem to grow a bit better than my glutes and my hamstrings. So for me personally, I didn't feel I needed a squat shoe.
Yeah. I'd want to say a massive thank you. I really appreciate your time because I know you're a busy father, PT, bodybuilder in Melbourne. And
Yep.
I love your work, man. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Daniel.